Hi everyone, this is Justin with CrossViews, and today I want to go over Azure DevOps Pipeline and ServiceNow Change Acceleration. We're going to do a demo, and I'm going to walk through a few slides here at the beginning just to set the stage for what you're going to see. What I want to address is the end-to-end change process within ServiceNow. So you see here probably things you're used to seeing like ideas and demands, and that goes on to maybe be waterfall or hybrid. Hybrid meaning a waterfall and agile. What I'm going to focus on down here in this execution section, this is what's new and what I want to show you around ServiceNow DevOps. So what we're going to do in this demonstration is we're going to connect Azure DevOps to our ServiceNow instance, and we're going to use Azure DevOps as our planning tool. So making work items and having information around that. You could connect Jira, you could use ITBM Agile, but for this demo we're going to show Azure DevOps. We're also going to get insight into the code repository within Azure DevOps. So we're going to see stuff that's been committed, maybe stuff that's been reverted, and importantly we're going to have insight into it, and we can use those insights to make decisions about whether code is approved for change or not approved for change, or just get a general lay of the land about how a particular pipeline is performing, or how a particular user, a particular committer is performing. Are they reverting a lot, or are they making lots of commits, or do they not make lots of commits, and maybe their code is could be seen as a little more risky because they don't make a lot of commits. All that information will now be available, and you can use that for decision making. The third thing we're going to connect is the actual orchestration tools. So in Azure DevOps, we can set up a pipeline and move something through, build, test, and deploy, and actually monitor the performance of that. So we'll have a success rate for how often that pipeline's been run and it's been successful, in particular which stages and stuff like that. So again, insights into how these DevOps tools are actually performing, so we can make good decisions, accelerate the change process, and provide everybody insight into what's going on. The last piece that we'll show in the demo is actually automated change. So there's two ways I'm going to show this in the demo. One is just the change is automatic and it automatically gets approved, and the second way is that it's actually going to be an approval or decision process, and we can leverage ServiceNow, we can leverage those insights I just talked about to decide whether we want to automate that change or not. Looking at things like test success rates and stuff like that, is it too risky? Do we not want to approve this change to go into production? So I think every developer can sympathize with, an onerous change process, whether that's filling out a long form, waiting for CAB, trying to defend and explain to people exactly what my change is, even if it's something relatively minor, like, hey, I just, moved something on an interface or on a web page, and I'm just, making a slight change to the code. Why does it take so long to get approval? And I could have had this done and been finished by now. So what we're hoping to show you with ServiceNow and these DevOps tools is that we can take that time to process a change down from days or weeks down to minutes. So we'll actually, in the pipeline, we'll create a change via the application programming interface or API. Then we'll use the insights that I just spoke about, now that we're connected to these tools, to gather risk data about the particular code that's being deployed. We'll evaluate that and we'll make a decision, yes, no, or in the first case, we'll actually just auto approve it, and then run that through an authorization policy. So potentially you could have a really fast change process for these really high performing and well performing pipelines, and maybe introduce a more complex approval process to where there might be more risks. So maybe we've automated the change so it gets into ServiceNow really fast, but maybe we still do some kind of person approval if the risk is higher. So what ServiceNow is going to bring us is these connections to all these CI, continuous integration or continuous delivery tools, automate the change management process, again looking at that risk data because we have insight into it, and then sharing that insight so people can see it in a dashboard kind of view. Again, taking the change process down from days and weeks to just minutes with that change approval process, and then the actual chain of custody and audit trail that's going to be left behind. So I'm going to show you, like, when we go look at the work notes for a particular change, you're going to see exactly the process it went through. You're going to be able to look at the commits that are related to it and see that actual code. So for today's demonstration, I'm going to stay strictly in Azure DevOps in ServiceNow. So I'm using ADO for the planning tool, the code repository, and the orchestration or the pipeline. So I've set up a build, test, deploy pipeline. My build and test don't do a whole lot other than it's like a hello world message, but my deploy step actually makes a call back to ServiceNow, opens that change request, and we follow that auto approval policy. So the steps that I'm going to follow is I'm going to create a work item, and then I'm going to fork the master branch and relate that to the work item that I'm looking at. Then I'm going to make and commit those changes to that branch. Then I'm going to create a pull request and merge it back to the master branch, and that's going to kick off my pipeline. And I've set that up in Azure DevOps to automatically happen when I do a commit back to master. So that pipeline will auto run and then automate the change process in ServiceNow. So enough of these slides, let's get to the demo. So this is the DevOps Insights dashboard, and this is where we're going to have kind of a high-level view of what's going on in our DevOps with everything we've got connected. So I mentioned that I have Azure DevOps connected. I'm in our showcase instance, so there's a lot more actually connected, like Jira and stuff like that, but we're going to focus on Azure DevOps. I did want to start and actually run through to this dashboard though, just to show kind of how we can have insight. And obviously if it's on a dashboard, I can use these insights within workflows, within my change process, when I'm automating that approval process that I talked about earlier. So here we have open DevOps change requests, the aging report. We can see non-DevOps change requests success rate for both of those groups. Here we have an 88% success rate on the DevOps changes. Our change request volume over time, and I've got some insight into different pipelines here on the bottom right. I have a normal pipeline, here's my CrossFuse demo pipeline, and trending on how that pipeline is actually running. If I look at commits, I'm looking at what's happening inside a code repository. I can see how many active committers I have. So we're having insight into every time someone hits commit in one of these code repositories, we're logging that. I can see the average commits per committer, or the average files added per commit. How many have been actually reverted, and what's that percentage? What are my top committers here broken down, and how is that trending? So Adela is trending up with 319 commits. Top reverters, like who's reverting a lot of their commits within the system, and how many commits are happening per app. So here I've got an airline reservation system, and here's the demo. I'm going to show you my CrossFuse app demo. You can see there's been a lot of commits while I was testing, and then that's dropped off since I've not been testing any longer. So for as far as development, I can see things like the commit frequency and how that looks over time, the average branches per repository, or the commits per pipeline execution, the commits without a work item. So how many changes are happening in the code that aren't even being associated with the work item? Maybe it's a story or a task or an epic. And then I can see those work items here over time. I can look at system health and see the task execution success rate, number of task executions, and the number of API calls here. And then finally on the dashboard, I can look at deployments. How many successful deployments have there been? How many failed deployments? What's that success rate? And the average lead time there. Again, all giving you some high-level visibility within ServiceNow with all the rest of your data around your change process and what's going on. Now you've got insight into the DevOps piece. So let's hop over to Azure DevOps. What I want to do is pull up the pipeline that I've created for this demo, and I want to show you what are the stages and steps I have in this pipeline, because I want to connect the dots back to ServiceNow so you see how these two things are connected and interacting. So I've set up a really basic YAML pipeline here for the demonstration. Notice that I've got this broken up into 3 stages. I mentioned earlier, build stage, I've got a test stage here, and then down on the bottom I've got a deploy stage. So that's going to show both in my pipeline in ServiceNow and in my pipeline in Azure DevOps. I'll be able to mirror them against each other and see where that stuff is in the pipeline. I want to point out 2 things here that are going on in these stages. One is this, ServiceNow DevOps agent job notification. I'm running this twice in each stage. I've got a started and a completed. And this is like a signal. It's an API call going out to ServiceNow going, hey, this stage is started. Hey, this stage is completed. And I can have tasks going on in between those notifications. But again, we're giving insight into ServiceNow and to what's going on with that pipeline. For this demo, I just got a hello world in my build step. I've got a hello world in my test step. But in my deploy step, I've actually got the ServiceNow DevOps server change acceleration. And this is the piece that's actually going to go out and create that change request. A workflow is going to pick that up, run through the change workflow for DevOps, and then talk back to Azure DevOps and let us know if that's successful or not. In the demo, I'm going to have one auto approve, and I'm going to have one where it runs through a decision process. It does not approve, and we'll see this step actually fails because we don't get the change approval. The other thing to point out here is these tasks over here on the right. So if I search for ServiceNow, what I did previously is I set up a service connection in Azure DevOps to ServiceNow, where I configured the instance and the password and all that stuff. And what that gave me are these tasks that I can add to my pipeline. So I've already shown you the job notifications. Both of that applies to agent and server. So in the deploy step, when we're doing our change process, we're going to use server notifications and a server change acceleration. In my previous steps, I used the agent job notifications. But I also have these artifact registrations, so if I wanted to register an artifact or a package within Azure DevOps, I could do that both at the agent and the server level, getting those things registered. So if I come back here to ServiceNow, what I want to show you is the actual pipeline that I set up for the Crossfuse demo. So here I have my Crossfuse app demo, and I've got 2 pipelines associated with that. One of these is auto-discovered when I connected Azure DevOps to ServiceNow. The second one I created, and I wanted to show you that one because that's where I mirrored the steps in my pipeline in ADO into ServiceNow. So you see here I've got a build, test, and in ServiceNow I called this server. This is actually corresponding to the job names in the pipeline. The one I want to point out, since once I've built this and kind of sync these up, they auto-connect based on those job names, but on the server step, I have this change control true false that I can check, and when I check it, I can set the business service, I can apply a standard change template, I can specify the change approval group, and then I can specify which branches are actually under the management of change control. So in this demo I just put everything's under the management of it, and what you'll see me do in this demo is use this business service to toggle whether or not that change approval process is going to be followed. So when I have Crossfuse business service demo, it's going to auto approve my change. But when I change that business service back to all, it's going to enforce the approval process and apply a decision to my actual change. So this is the actual pipeline that's connected and kind of syncs up and corresponds with Azure DevOps. But there's a lot more going on. I've talked about the planning tool, the commits, and the pipeline. So I'll show you here, if I look at this Azure DevOps connection, I do have different plans associated with it. So I've got my demo project plan over there where I can see work items. If I click through this and look at that planning tool, I'll see work items, I'll see versions for that plan as they get created. I've got features and apps that can be imported, and all of this is being discovered when you connect the 2 tools. My repository, I found that within Azure DevOps, and then of course I've talked about the orchestration tasks. I found those for my build, prod, and test, and then of course the pipeline, and I've already shown you that I'm going to build my own pipeline. So what I want to do is come back to Azure DevOps here and then walk through the actual process of committing something. So I'm actually going to come back here and open that pipeline that I showed you earlier. So let's go back into my history here. We'll go to Crossfuse demo pipeline, and I'm going to open up the pipeline UI. So, and I'm going to go ahead and collapse this menu here. So you can see I've got a running pipeline history of how this pipeline's been performing. In my last demonstration I actually failed the change, so you see that here, but I've got the build, the test, and the prod steps here coming over from Azure DevOps. So let's go ahead and dock this right or left, and then I'm going to pull out Azure DevOps and open it up here on the right. So we're actually going to see both of these things together start talking and interacting with each other. So I've got my work items here set up in Azure DevOps. I'm just going to create a new task, and we're just going to call this task anything. We'll just call this DevOps demo task, and I will copy that down here to the description, and I'm going to save it. And once I save it, this is where I'm going to actually fork my code repository. So I'm going to create a branch, and it's going to auto associate my work item with it, and we'll just put a name in there. So we'll call it DevOps demo task, and we're going to copy master here, and I'm going to create it. And now that my branch is created, maybe I'm going to make some change. So let's go open this demo new code, and I'm just going to actually make a change to it right here. So we'll put in here doing a DevOps demo, and just comments, no major changes. And I'm going to copy this because I'm going to put this in my commit notes too. So I'm going to copy that and commit. And we'll just put that in here, paste, and let's go ahead and associate that work item again. So DevOps demo task now is associated. I'm going to make that commit, and now it's saved. And that's saved to my branch, but I want to bring that back to the master, which is going to kick off my pipeline. So I'm going to create a pull request, and leave all that be. I'm not going to set any reviewers on this one, but we'll go ahead and create, and I'm going to approve it or complete it myself so we can get that pipeline kicked off. So we're going to merge this, and I'm going to go ahead and delete the branch after I merge. And that should be started. So let's go ahead and open that pipeline here. So it is running, and we see it's on my first stage here for build, not quite started yet, but it'll start here in a second, and this is going to update in real time. And what we'll see here is this will go from 16, we'll have a number 17 to correspond with this pipeline that's running. So we have build that's been started and completed, so let's go ahead and refresh my pipeline over here, see if we see that number 17. And we do. We have 17, and we're showing my build step is successful, has been completed, which corresponds over here. So the test process is actually kicked off now, and once that updates, we'll be able to see that here. I'm just going to toggle back and forth by clicking on a different pipeline. Okay, good. We see test has started and completed within ServiceNow. We should see that update here in Azure DevOps, and we do. Let's just widen this window here so we see this process here. It looks like we've had a change request created on the pipeline, and we're just waiting on this deploy step to finish up here. So I'll go ahead and refresh, and likely, okay, it's gotten started at least. So we have our change. Look, it's completed here in Azure DevOps. If I click back down here, we can see it has completed. So let me just refresh my pipeline one more time, and I've got green all the way around. So I've got a successful build, test, and deploy process. I've got my change request that was approved automatically, and now the pipeline's done and we're completed. So in the usual world, we're done here and we can move on, but I want to actually show you that change request so we can talk through what's happening in there and speak to some of those audit points. So you see it's created a change request automatically. We flagged this as a DevOps category, and we're using that on the workflow side to trigger what workflow we're running on. So if it's a DevOps change, we're going to take these actions, and of course all of that's configurable. So this one's in particular has been closed because it's completed. So if we come down here, we've got a short description and a description, of course, and my justification, implementation, risk and impact, backout, and test plans. I've got links back to Azure DevOps, so I can click on that and go see what the actual code changes are. You'll even see that in a related list here on the bottom. But on the scheduling tab, you can see when it was planned and when it actually happened. Since this is a really simple demo, these are happening in seconds, of course. And then I got my audit trail, my notes, so I can see exactly when this was created, who created it, my DevOps integration user. The DevOps system went and approved the task automatically, and it moved from scheduled to implement to review and to close. I think I had an authorized step in there as well. If I come down here to the bottom, I can see the actual commits in the change. So let me look at the most recent one here, because it seemed to have picked up some other ones. But I look at the most recent one here. So if I click this, it's going to actually open that commit record, and I have a commit URL where I can actually click on this. So just picture I'm an auditor, or maybe I'm a manager looking at, well, okay, what was going on? I can click on this. It's going to take me to Azure DevOps. And not only is it taking me right to that commit, it takes me to a view where I can see the difference. I see that the comments were this on the left, and now the comments are this on the right for this particular change. So, you know, talk about insight into what's going on. I can just click through and see everything I need to see. What I want to do now is actually flip this so that I'm seeing when that change approval process does not meet the criteria for auto approval. So let's open up that pipeline, and we'll flip that business service so I can start enforcing my change approval process. Now this might not be the way you do it in your system. I'm using the business service in the demo to kind of illustrate the two processes there. So I've done that. We'll dock it back left, and we'll just follow the same process I just showed you for creating a work item and testing that or pushing it through so we see that change approval process get applied. So we'll do DevOps demo change decision policy. So we're using the decision tables within ServiceNow that already exist to automate this approval. So we'll save that, and we'll create a branch just like we did last time, and DevOps demo change decision policy, and I've already got my work item associated with it, so we'll create that, and I'll make a small change to my code. So showing a change decision policy. Let's just copy that for my commit notes too. And put that work item back on there. Commit that. Create our pull requests. And of course, I'm just going to auto approve that for demo purposes, so you can see that get kicked off and get started here. So that's doing the merge right now, and we should be able to open up that pipeline, and just like we did before, watch all that happen. So let's go over to our pipelines here. Looks like that has started. We're in our build phase right now. It's actually started, so let's go back to my pipeline UI. And looks like maybe I clicked on that too fast. Let's give it a refresh. We're looking for number 18 since we already did 17. There's number 18. Okay, it started here. This is said it's completed, so we're on step number 2 here. Looks like it hasn't started. And I'll just flip back and forth like I did before. Okay, good. It started that second step. And let's see, it's already created a change request, but this one's actually going to not approve. So we're going to see this turn red, and this is going to turn yellow, and then over here we're going to see this deploy step actually fail. So let's see if, yeah, look, it's failed over here in Azure DevOps. So I come back here to ServiceNow. It stopped here on my prod step, and I've got a red change request here. So let's open up that change request and take a look at what happened. You can go look at our notes, of course, and what we'll see is the DevOps system rejected the task, so that was the approval task, and it did that because it applied a change policy. So down here on the related list, we see the DevOps change approval policies, and the decision was the quality was too low. And what this is looking at is the number of tests that have passed successfully, and for this particular product or this particular application, that's 0. And I did that in the demo so you could see that actually fail. But what we're pulling in as inputs into this decision is the change request, the pipeline execution, how many total commit changes there are for this one, the commits without work items, the count of unfinished stories, the stage that we're in, and the percentage of test cases passing. And this is what is 0 for this particular app. So it hit that decision and then it auto rejected. Now if it had hit that and the test cases were fine, and you can look at all the other conditions here. The commits without work item is equal to 0, and the count of unfinished stories is equal to 0, and the percentage of test cases passing is greater than 98, then it would have auto-approved the task. Now, this is all configurable. You could have different criteria. Remember, like I said earlier, we're now connected to these tools, so you have different insights and visibility into specific data. We saw on the dashboard, commits per user, average commits, how much the reversion rate, so you can kind of do a lot of stuff there. The other thing to speak to here is that I, for the demo purposes, auto-rejected it, so you could see it stopping the change process. You could change the workflow so that it didn't auto-reject. Maybe it did auto-reject, but then it created another approval for a human being, maybe a change manager or a development manager or something else. So those options are always there as well. That concludes our demonstration. Thank you so much for your time and for watching our video. Hopefully today you've seen how you can integrate your DevOps tools and processes with ServiceNow and not only accelerate your deployments through automated change management, but also have insight into all your continuous integration and continuous delivery tools. As always, CrossFuse is here to help you on your journey. If you'd like to talk about DevOps or anything related to ServiceNow, send us an email at letstalk@crossfuse.com.